Welcome to Your Financial Advocate with Greg Dupont from Dupont Wealth Solutions. As a practicing advisor and attorney, Greg teaches pre-retirees how to reduce debt and taxes and save with less risk so they have more spendable income and plan their way to a better life. Join us for this journey where Greg draws on years of experience and guest experts to help listeners achieve more spendable income for retirement.
Hello and welcome to Your Financial Advocate with Greg Dupont of Dupont Wealth Solutions. Greg, what's going on?
Well, Eric, I am sitting here today just trying to reflect on the last few weeks of what's happened here in our nation, and I felt it was time for you and I to maybe have almost a fireside chat, but there's no fire here, so how about if we head out to our local watering hole and kind of talk about what's happening here and what's going on.
Sounds great. All right, I'm pulling up a stool and I'm ordering a Guinness. What are you ordering?
Well, you know me, Eric. I am a creature of habit, so I'm going to be very particular that I would like my Sapphire Martini extra dry with an olive, plain olive. Don't give me those crazy ones.
I didn't know there were crazy olives, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah,
I kind of
don't need blue cheese and things like that messing up my Sapphire, right? So.
No, who would ruin blue cheese with an olive? Either way. All right, well, our drinks are here, and it's time to chat. So I love the way you titled this podcast, Biding Our Time, right? And so we're just going to talk about this. What's going on? I mean, you have your finger on the pulse of the finance world, knowing that there is going to be a change in Washington, change in the country. What are the implications of this change as you see it?
Eric, I've had the opportunity to talk with lots of people about this and get some perspective on what the real impact of this change of, I want to say the word regime, but that's too powerful. It's got too much emotion tied into that word, right? But there is a change of the party in charge now. And there's going to be a lot of different laws coming out that people are going to be worried about. But I think we need to look at the kind of the short-term, medium-term, and long-term impacts of these things going forward.
Okay. So let's talk about short-term.
So there's going to be, new people in place. For example, the most likely new member of the Fed is from the school of thought that deficits don't really matter and free money runs the game. So when you think about what's going to happen short-term here with more stimulus, it's likely that we're going to continue to see this record run in the stock market. It's almost inconceivable what's happened over the last several months with the stock market itself, and as measured by the S&P and the main metrics. But we're going to see more money sloshing around the system in the short term.
Again, I think a lot of people, myself included, it's great to have that, but it comes at a cost, right? I mean, we know that it's going to have to be paid back sometime. And that's where I think a lot of people that are short-sighted, you're talking about the short term, I think too many people are short-sighted in the fact that, all right, I'm going to get this check and I'm going to be able to do A, B, and C with it. Well, that's great, but what are you going to do in a year, in 2 years, or in 5 years? Uncle Sam is not generous. I'm sorry. I don't know about your uncle, but my Uncle Sam wants his money.
There is going to be a day of reckoning.
Yeah.
And, again, that's not our short-term, is not going to happen because if they did anything to try to pull back the spending, the economy would collapse. It's all being propped up by the monetary policy of free money. And that is, we're seeing, again, in the short term, and what we'll likely see is continued the rising of the boats in the market as money that's being printed is looking for a place to go to get some return. We're seeing that the values of stock in the market are kind of unhinged from the reality of what's going on in the economy, unhinged from the underlying value of the companies. And that's the direct result of, again, money looking for a place to go. Have you noticed what happened with Bitcoin lately?
No, I haven't. I mean, the last time I saw it, it was way up. But what are you going to tell me about it?
Yeah, it way up. It's shooting
Still.
through the shooting way the heck up. Well, by the time this is produced, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Because the nature of Bitcoin is that it is something that's incredibly volatile because there are very few buffers on it. But it has been responding to this flood of cash. So short term, most likely that Bitcoin has continued to go up because it's now being used by many people as another asset class and kind of replacing what used to be the place where gold bugs put their money when they're afraid of what the future would be. Now we have more and more people that are putting money into Bitcoin and those type of digital currencies to hedge their bet.
Yeah, I just remember that I believe one of the first purchases with Bitcoin was pizza. And I think there's a running tally on how much that pizza costs. And the last time I looked at it, I think it was 2 pizzas ended up being about $190 million. Because I think at the time it cost them like 80,000 Bitcoin for the pizzas.
Right.
But whatever it was just some crazy numbers. And now I don't know if somebody's regretting those pizzas or if they still think fondly on those days. I don't know.
Yeah. So as we look at what will happen in the economy here in the next few months or next year, it's going to be the coronavirus still running its course, right? Which is a suppressant on economic activity, bar none. And the Biden administration is going to be empowered, needing to show some action. So it's most likely that they will deliver some type of stimulus plan, infrastructure, those type of things that had been talked about, that had been blocked by the few remaining members of the Republican Party that actually cared about deficit. So it's going to be all the cards on the table. So as we look to the next year, 2 years off of that, I would be surprised if there wasn't a significant economic boom that's going to be bought by a significant increase in deficit. Another several $1 trillion to our deficit over this couple of years.
Yeah. It'll be really interesting because the stimulus going out, I kind of want to see how it mirrors the vaccine going out, right? Because the stimulus has come out. We've already had it once, and we have all sorts of business loans and PPP loans and all those things that have gone out. We've seen how it affects the economy slowly and then quickly in different areas, and the vaccine going out is going to be more of a trickle out, right? I mean, there's a line depending on your health, depending on your age, depending on your vulnerability. It gets delivered to the most vulnerable first, which I agree with 100%. But as it slowly goes out, I'm curious to see how the tide turns when it comes to how people think about the coronavirus, how the nation is going to open back up in sections or I have no idea how they're going to handle it, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting just to see the slow flow of information and kind of the progress that we're going to see just over the next 12 months.
Yeah. I feel like I do need to make a kind of a public service announcement on this. One of the things I do when I've got my lawyer hat on is that I represent the Central Ohio area mental health services boards in connection with commitment of people that are mentally ill and need to be in the hospital. So I'm kind of on the front lines with that, and because of that, I was fortunate enough that the other day I was offered the opportunity to get in on the tail end of an open vial and get my vaccine shot. So I have taken it. I'm now 3 days out from that, and I have not yet grown any extra appendages.
Nice.
I've not had any extra sensory perception. I don't have X-ray vision as a result of it or anything like that. And I've got my sense of taste and smell. Some would say I don't have any sense at all, but that's another story altogether. So safe, but it's interesting because they have an app that you sign up for when you get this. that other than tracking your every whereabout for the rest of your life, it's there to report back any side effects. So they're getting a huge amount of data as this rolls out. So even though Operation Warp Speed produced this thing in a record-setting time, the body of knowledge that they're gaining as this is now rolling out, the average consumer, by the time it gets to them as it works down, they should feel very safe. That subject to the kinds of things that are always there potentially with vaccines, that it's a safe vaccine for them. So they should not let the fact that it was designed and put on the market so quickly hold them back from protecting themselves from this disease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's not like we're going to sit here and say we're drinking the Kool-Aid. It's through research, through development, through tracking, through all the things that you've just said that they put in place, that we're going to be able to be more confident about it. And hopefully, again, this turns the tide very quickly. I would foresee a ramp up in how speedily they're going to be able to give the vaccine out, because I think there's multiple companies working on it now, if I'm not mistaken. And just really being on the forefront of it, like you said. I mean, I like the way you put it. They put it at warp speed. Probably this is the fastest I've ever seen anything, hit the market as far as a medication is concerned. Usually, it's in trial for years. So I know that caused some apprehension, but good to know you're 3 days out. I was really crossing my fingers for like ESP or X-ray vision or something, for you, but we'll take it. The lack of an extra appendage. I mean, depending on the appendage. I mean, if you get a third arm that's really helpful, shoot, how much work could you get done then? Well,
yeah.
It might just hold another martini glass. Maybe it's not a good idea.
So you take those factors into consideration, and as you're looking to what's going to be unfolding in front of us economically.
Mm-hmm.
And as we shared before, I'm generally a very optimistic person about what the future is going to bring. But as we come out, I think it's going to be basically the third quarter that you're going to start seeing real growth in the economy as where we get past the supported of just maintenance of the economy by the production of government money. You're going to start seeing people going back out, being comfortable again, going back out to the restaurants and travel, and that whole sector of the economy that's still languishing start to pick back up. So I think that you'll see, starting in, again, like around the third quarter, rolling into 2022, just huge growth from the kind of the pent-up part of the economy at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And that's going to be just in time for them to start talking about increasing taxes, which is going to temper everything.
Mm-hmm. And that was my next question is what are you seeing on the horizon for that?
So the expiration of the Tax Cut and Job Act in 25 is going to be the driving force. But it's going to be the driving force for fundraising, right? You're going to go into the next electoral season. Guess what? It's going to happen a year from now. It's going to start up, right? As they start fighting about the few houses in the Senate, or a few seats in the Senate that are exposed, and you're going to talk about the House of Representatives and all that, just like we have seen this pattern over and over and over again. Well, we're going to see it again. But the primary theme is going to be on the Republican side, right? They're going to say that we've got to take back control because we've lost control to the liberals, right? And it's going to be the same way on the other side, that we got to get a majority. We just got we've just got even in the Senate. We've got to preserve our House, and we've got to get more so that we can move forward. So the battle is going to be about what do they do with the Tax Cut and Job Act. And if nothing happens, if you may recall, if nothing happens, it's going to sunset back to what it was before. But at that point in time, when we have this conversation next year, it's going to be the conservatives are going to find their conservative backbone again because that helps them for fundraising. And they're going to be saying, well, debt and deficit are out of control. We got to do something, blah, 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 blah. So there's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of discussion about they're going to raise taxes. And in the medium term, I don't think they're going to be able to do that either side. Going to prevail on that. So I think when we look forward, I think the certainty is that the Tax Cut and Job Act will expire, going back to the old rates.
I don't see how it could do anything else. I mean, there's a time when you have to pay the piper, and he's been warming up for a long time, right? Yeah. And so that's my concern. I mean, you look at Social Security. I mean, I'm not trying to dive into too many rabbit holes here, Greg, but honestly, you look at Social Security, you look at what's going on with that, how many people are retiring every day. Is that safe? That's a whole another conversation for another day, but they have to have money from somewhere. And if Social Security is a concern for people because of how much is in there and how much is being paid out, taxes have also got to be a concern, because it's not like we can continue to run up debt, because the debt clock, if you have ever gone to that page, it just keeps moving faster. And as it does, the number grows. There's a point where you can't make enough to pay it off, and we've got to find money somewhere.
Well, the significance of what's going on in D.C. right now, what's happened for the last, it's been a trend for the last, I'll say 15 years. I'm not a student of it, but I'll say the last 15 years. And it's going to continue into the Biden administration, is this, what they call modern monetary theory, where the central contention is that debt and deficit don't matter. And we are absolutely stress testing that now. And we'll continue to we'll continue to stress test it well into the Biden administration. And either we're going to accept that it works and debt and deficit doesn't matter, which has its own set of political and policy implications that come off of that, or we're going to have that reckoning at some point in time. The 25 could be a point of reckoning with the expiration of Tax Cut and Job Act, but I think more the point of reckoning is as we get closer to 2030, which is commonly the point in time that the Social Security trustees have said that the trust fund is going to start being under serious stress, and whether we're going to start printing money to pay Social Security and all those kind of things. So it's going to be an interesting ride for the next few years. But to your point, even if we find that this debt and deficit in modern monetary theory is a viable operating philosophy, at some point in time, things have to change because there will be a limit. We're not at it yet, but there is going to be some theoretical limit that's going to require taxes to go up. It's just a matter of when, and other assets being subject to taxation. So we saw the first shot of that with the Secure Act at the end of last year, or the year before last, when the Congress got together and overwhelmingly supported basically imposing a tax on retirement plans for the beneficiary, which is essentially an estate tax, although it's not in name, it is in reality. And Biden has talked about supporting that. People around him have talked about even accelerating that from the 10 years that we now are allowed to take money into having to do it within 5 years or less. There's also been talk about removing the capital gains step up in basis, which for many people is a tremendous tax savings when they have Microsoft stock that they've sat on for years and their kids are going to inherit it. Well, they get to inherit it at the new value, not at if for capital gains purposes. That's what they get to take the tax based upon, that new value, not what mom and dad bought it at. So that's something that's likely to happen within the Biden administration, that step up in basis on capital gains is going to go away. A lot of momentum that way. And they're going to, again, need to maybe not so much address that deficit, okay, because it is not something that's ever going to be paid off. I'm sorry, the debt. It's not anything that's ever going to be paid off. But the deficit, when they start finding that they can't borrow money and print money effectively anymore, that's when we got the first day of reckoning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, we're kind of drawing short on time here. I know there's probably a couple other things you want to touch on, but to your point just a moment ago, when you're talking about the step up in basis being eliminated, that means that people that have that scenario, whether it's property, whether it's stocks, things like that, that could cause that event to happen or for capital gains to happen, they should be acting now, correct?
Yeah, Eric. When you look at all of these things on the horizon, the person that is now has saved their money or are saving still, they need to start looking at ways to reduce the tax impact of those funds as they are inherited by paying for with leveraged dollars through life insurance and those type of old tools that we used to look at. And they need to be more strategic. We simply cannot continue to follow the old ways of saving. We've got to start thinking differently. The rules are changing around us, and we have to be mindful of it, whether it's through Roth conversion or cash value life insurance and things of that nature. They've got to start thinking differently. As an aside, Eric, it was kind of interesting that when the last stimulus bill was passed, there was something slipped in similarly to the Secure Act. When the Secure Act was passed, the whole change of that inherited, that 10-year change, that was slipped in without any conversation. Well, they did a similar thing with the last round of stimulus. But interestingly, the thing that they slipped in this time is something that is going to benefit the consumer because it changed this esoteric little part of the insurance code to basically make life insurance cash value more affordable for the consumer to accumulate. And ask yourself why they did that.
I have no idea.
They did that because they are wealthy and they've got their money in life insurance. And they just gave themselves a big boost on return of income on dollars that are not going to be taxed.
Well, there you go. That's a big surprise.
Yeah.
So, what? Politicians looking out for themselves? What?
Yeah.
That's crazy, Greg.
The more that you peel the onion on this,
The more you cry.
Sorry. Hey, did you finish all that Guinness?
Hang on. Let me finish pouring it into the glass. There we go.
There you go. Nice. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. All right.
That was a beautiful pour there, Eric.
Thank you. That's good stuff.
The more that you investigate the actions of the federal government, the more you understand that they use life insurance as a vehicle to create and transfer wealth to a scale that we have no understanding in the mass population, and that it is going to be, because they have such a vested interest in it, it is going to be the only way to pass money from generation to generation in a tax-free fashion. And as we've talked about before, with the Secure Act, if you have $1 million in your IRA, most likely you're going to be giving a third of that or more to Uncle Sam. Whereas as they are setting themselves up for their $1 million to become $2 million through leverage to their kids, the rich are in fact getting richer, while us working class folk are bearing the burden of it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Greg. I'd like to say this is a great podcast today, but the information was great, but not necessarily the message that we want to hear. It's the message we need to hear. I think that old saying is, it's the hero we need, not the one we deserve, or something like that. Same principle. It's the information we need, not necessarily the information we want. But I'm glad you brought it to us because it's important, and people need to act sooner rather than later with whatever strategies they need to be putting in place. And to have that conversation with you to know what strategies they should be looking at, how do they get a hold of you?
Eric, a couple things as we wrap up here today. First of all, people need to get an understanding of what they have and what they're exposed to with regard to taxation. And because people don't really understand how much of their asset base is subject to taxation. And I would offer, if they would like, to go to our website, www.taxsmart4life. That's www.taxsmart4life.com, and get a feel for how much of their asset base is subject to taxation. When they get there, you're going to have to put in my advisor code 257321 to get access to it, and that'll give them a report as to how much risk they have in their current savings and what the tax picture might look like for them. And that would give them also the opportunity, if they wanted to follow up with me directly, I can analyze that with them and give them some observations and some ideas. And to get a hold of me, they can call my office, 614-408-0004, 614-408-0004, or they can get in touch with me through email. That's Greg, Greg, at DuPontWealth.com. That's DuPontWealth.com.
All right, Greg, thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure sitting down with you, having a drink, talking about this stuff.
Have to do it again sometime, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, to you, the listener, thank you for tuning in and listening to Your Financial Advocate with Greg Dupont. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Greg comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for joining us today. For everyone at Dupont Wealth Solutions, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Your Financial Advocate. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Dupont Wealth Solutions. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.